What's up guys, and welcome back to another EVE Online video. This morning with the daily downtime, we had some big news drop regarding the Deathless and the content that's coming up through them and through that storyline. So I thought I'd talk about it today, make sure you're all brought up to speed and kind of understand what this means and what the content is. So, if you've been paying attention to the EVE client, the EVE launcher this morning, you will have found this article titled "Awakening Zarzakh, Aid the Deathless." And so what this is I'm just going to kill my blur because that's on, isn't it? So let's turn that off. There we go. What that is this is the first real content that is being generated in aid of the Deathless. Now that he's revealed himself and Zarzakh has been unveiled, we have the first real content to go alongside this. Now interestingly, this is all outside of Zarzakh. So the gates are open, Zarzakh is possible to navigate. I'll put a link to my video of flying around Zarzakh in the top right now if you haven't seen it already. But there's not much you can actually do in there, and none of the content that's been released at the moment involves Zarzakh itself. Basically, we have the ability to support the Deathless in terms of being able to get the Fulcrum, which is the station inside Zarzakh, to try and get some more power going. And he needs specific items to be able to do this, or they need specific items in order to do this. Basically, it's all going to be in wormhole space, and these are existing sites. These are all existing wormhole sites, so there's no new content in that regard, but there are specific drops which only come from these sites after this patch that is needed in order to help out the Deathless Circle. Basically, you collect resources from these sites, return them to Zarzakh, where you will get LP, and this LP means your standings with Angels and Garistas will improve, and you can also use the LP in order to trade them in at Angel and Garista's LP stores for BPCs of the Mamba and the Mekbal. So if you take part in this, you'll be some of the first people to be able to get hold of the new pirate faction destroyers. Now it's going to be quite challenging, like really quite challenging content. I'm going to be honest, it's definitely not the most accessible stuff to get us started, which I think is fine. But you will need to be quite careful with this. But if you are excited about getting your hands on these new pirate faction destroyers nice and early, this is going to be the way to do it. Yeah. And then one other, I guess, thing to mention is that this event is going to run all the way up to the 14th of November. So over 6 weeks, probably closer to 7 weeks, this is going to run, which is a nice long time. And basically it's up until the Havoc expansion goes live. So you can see Havoc is going to come on the 14th of November here, and that's when this event comes to an end. So it's going to help you get standings with the Angels and Garistas, which could be really important when Havoc actually kicks in and we get to use Zarzakh more frequently and enlist with those factions. But also it gives you the opportunity to get your hands on the two new faction destroyers that are available in game. Now, in order to do this, there's not a tremendous amount of information in this article, but we will read this section here. But then we'll also go to the patch notes in a second where there's some more detail. Basically, the sites that we need to utilize are, we need to get our coalesced elements and individual elements from Drifter Hive wormhole sites. Now, it's distinctly possible that most people have never even heard of a Drifter Hive wormhole site. They do exist, but they're extremely rare, and I will go into that in more detail in a second. And then you also have to get element containment vessels and element control data from Sleeper Relic and Sleeper data sites, which are also, of course, defended by Sleeper Rats. And so then once you bring all that together, you manufacture the coalesced elements from all that stuff, and that'll give you one of those that you can trade in for an LP token. So it's quite a lot. You need to be able to get all these things together. Probably a lot of this stuff might end up on the market from people that farm the content and can't be bothered to sort of do the rest. But we'll see. But so if we just quickly flick over to the patch notes so we can see some of this in more detail, and then I will talk about the other bits in a second. But here it is in more detail. If you go over to today's patch notes, which are also available in the client, the launcher, you get the feature that has been released today in more detail. So this is what we've already spoken about, but then venture into drifter hives, destroy all the drifters and other rats that are guarding it, and collect elements from different hives to combine them into coalesced elements. Oh, that's going to be rough. So sounds like you need to get different elements from different hives to be able to do this. These are very, very challenging sites, and you have to basically, they're intended for well-equipped fleets. Otherwise you will die. And again, we'll go into more detail in a second because they are really challenging. Then there's also Sleeper Relic and data sites, which are, as mentioned here, have forgotten and unsecured in the prefix. These are also quite challenging. The Sleeper Rats that guard them are tough, but they go up in difficulty as you go from C1 to C6. So you can easily go in and solo a C1 Sleeper Relic and data site in several different well-fit ships. You could do it in a Stratios, for example. You can, of course, do it in a Tech 3 cruiser. But depending on your skill level, if you can't fly those or you don't want to risk that kind of cash, you can do it in a passive fit Drake, for example. And so my intention in the coming days is to produce 1 or 2 videos on how to run these sites as well, so that if you are interested, you can go and give it a go. But do bear in mind that they're not just guarded by sleepers. Of course, all of these sites are in wormhole space. They're in J space, which is an incredibly dangerous space. And wormholers generally will be quite excited about this content, not because they have any intention of farming this. You are the content for most wormholers. So we'll all be delighted to see significantly increased traffic, quite a lot of people day tripping in from nullsec and highsec and lowsec, because we will camp the sites and come kill you while you're running them. So do bear that in mind. Make sure you fly what you can afford to lose, and pay serious attention to D-scan. But you can run these sites in a passive fit Drake or something similar, or go cloaky if you can in a Stratios or a Tech 3 cruiser. As mentioned though, if I will produce a video on how to run these low class sites. I also will link here the ability, of course, to do the C5 Ninja Stratios. Could work quite well here, which allows you to go and hack some of the higher class sites in a C5 in a Stratios. But again, the Stratios isn't that cheap. The fit runs like nearly 800 million because of the price of the ship. But there'll be another link up here. And yes, once you've got all this stuff together, you will then use access option now to deposit all 3 into the fulcrum to receive your reward. So that's another part which is very dangerous and going to make this difficult to access. Is once you've got all the elements together, you have to go and fly and drop them off at the fulcrum, which means the fulcrum is almost definitely going to be camped by groups that want to do this themselves but not do the work. So they will just camp and insta-blap you when you land on the fulcrum, loot your wreck, and then hand in the good stuff. So this is going to be rough. It's going to be very difficult to get into for most players. At least that's my expectation. But hopefully, hopefully people can still enjoy this and have some good fun. Because they are kind of valuable, right? So 1 token, it mentions here, you get 1 token. You can either exchange that 1 token in for a 1-run BPC of the Mechabal or the Mamba, or if you've already done that or don't want to, you can get 50 million for 1 token. And then if you really can't, if you die a few times going to the fulcrum, you can also individually trade in the separate elements at Angel and Garista's stations. So that's an option as well, at 5 million a pop. Ah, that's nice though. I hadn't read this before, so this last point I think is quite important because, of course, all of this is being done in support of the Deathless. So if you go and run these sites and turn it in at the Fulcrum or take it to Angel or Garista space, that's all in support of the Deathless. But if you don't want them to succeed, you want to support the existing factions of New Eden, then you can take all the individual elements to the Society of Conscious Thought in Geminate, and they will also buy those from you as well. So that's nice. So let's go read it, go in more detail and give this stuff a read. Patch notes and the news article on Awakening Zarzakh. Go do that. But then, as we've already spoken briefly about the Sleeper Relic data sites, and I will bring out more content on that in the coming days. But one thing I just want to talk about now in more detail is these drifter hives, because I'm speculating, but I imagine most people haven't heard of these. They are very rare sites, and will be incredibly hard to find, and will almost definitely be being farmed by big groups. But basically, these exist. Hopefully, let me make this bigger so you can all see it. If you go over to the EVE University wiki page on drifters, they give you a lot of information. But basically, drifter, what they're called drifter hives, only exist in 5 specific wormholes. So not like 5 types of wormhole, none of that. There are 5 specific wormholes known as drifter wormholes. You'll know when you enter them because they have a specific effect type with a name. But basically, there are literally 5. They've all got one of the wormhole effects. And these are the only systems in the game where drifter hives spawn. And then they're also incredibly difficult to run once you get that. So here you go, like hive sites, all drifter wormholes contain a huge drifter hive, but only drifter wormholes, and they are all slightly different depending on the type of drifter wormhole. So that, if we just pop back to here, that makes me assume here at the end and collect elements from different hives, combine them into coalesced elements. So my assumption is we're going to have to farm all of these to get coalesced elements, as opposed to just getting just being able to farm one over and over and over again. Probably, I don't know that for sure, but that is my interpretation of that wording. So it's not even going to be that you can find one of these, which is incredibly hard, and then just set up camp in it and try and run these sites over and over. So it might be a while before we see much of this. I don't know. I'm sure some of the big groups, Fraternity, some of the wormhole guys like Wronghole or someone might head in and start farming these places when they find them. But but yes. And you also need to be very careful with just the wormhole systems in general, because when you like warp to one of these drifter wormholes from the outside, there will be drifter ships on the outside that will try and kill you. I'm going to link a video of me exploring the readout system in the top right for the first time a couple of years ago. So I'll link that up there so you can also see what's going on. I don't run the drifter hive in it because it's way too hard. You can't solo it. And why do I say you can't solo it? These drifter hive sites, again, you can like go make sure you utilize the EVE University wiki, but basically there is there will be one or two drifters throughout in different rooms that you need to fight, and basically how the drifters in these sites function is they have like a blue shield health bar instead of a regular shield health bar, and when you take down that blue shield health, they fire a doomsday device. And with some very few exceptions, they will insta-wipe a sub-capital ship off the grid, 100 to 0 in one hit, because it's a doomsday. Honestly, it's a mini doomsday. So, they are flying in battleships and cruisers, but they have a doomsday on them. So, you've got to be really careful with that. You need to be able to doing things like orbiting with sufficient angular velocity and small enough signature that they miss you, and then you can try and take them down. But you've got to be in decent fleets. You need logi. You need all this kind of stuff if you're going to have any luck running these sites. So, again, as mentioned, not for most of us. I'm going to see if we can give it a go with my group, if we can find one of these holes, and maybe we'll give it a crack. And if we do, of course, we'll upload a video of it. But we'll see. That's probably pretty unlikely. So yes, so that's it, guys. If you do want to see how you can maybe farm some low-class wormholes, sleeper data relic sites solo, then please subscribe to the channel, and I will be trying to bring out a video or two in the coming days on how you can do that. Let me know what you think about this content. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it because I live in wormhole space, and I'm generally excited about the Havoc expansion that's coming out and everything that's going with the Joves and the Deathless and things. I'm pretty pumped with the whole thing, but yeah, I have my thoughts on how inaccessible this content is for most of the players in EVE Online. So yeah, we'll see. But I'm really keen to get your feedback as well, so please drop a comment. Let us know whether you're going to be giving this a go, whether you have any tips or tricks on how you're going to do it. Let's see how we all get on. So thanks very much for watching, guys. I will see you all in the next one. Cheers.